Hello, everybody. This is Cheryl Klein. I'm the editorial director of Lee and Low Books, and I'm here with Jan Reynolds, who is the author of many fine photo essay books, but today especially The Lion Queens of India, which is published on Tuesday by Lee and Low. And we are really excited to have Jan here to talk about how this book came about and what the book is about and everything else. So Jan, take it away. Like, how did you first hear about Rashila? And who are the Lion Queens? I guess we should start there.
Are the Lion Queens. Hello, everyone, and and thank you, Cheryl. It's really a pleasure to be here. Anytime I can talk about the books and the work, I am very excited because the people I work with that show up in my books are just wonderful people. So, Lion Queens, how did I find them? I'm going to show you a little news clip in a minute, but the first thing that happened, Cheryl, was I was invited to speak at a conference for international librarians in Chennai, India. And I had been working I had built a book, and I had built it with students using social media in real time. So I was in the Himalaya with a little young lama in a monastery, but I could get some Wi-Fi at night, and children would tell me what they wanted taken for pictures. They would ask me questions. So I basically built that book in real time with students. So I was invited to talk at this library conference about how I had worked building a book in real time with students. And to get over there, I needed to write a grant. They were going to host me, but I had to buy a plane ticket. So having a small nonprofit, I went for it and figured out how to get a plane ticket over there by working on Lion Queens with students around the globe, which is what I did in real time. I got wonderful maps from kindergartners of India. And for me, so many students in the US are not very good with geography. And in all of my books, and thank you, Cheryl, you made sure maps were in there. There's always a map. Yeah. Key. And I was so happy that meant as much to you. And so anyhow, the work was being done while I was in the field. I built Lion Queens. We call the book, it's The Lion Queens of India, but we call it I built Lion Queens with kids in real time. Getting their posts. Their teachers handle the social media, of course, at school. But I had kids that couldn't wait to get to school to see if I'd finally seen the lion myself to take a photograph.
These are students in the United States or in
All
India?
Around the world. I work in international schools. I have worked in Singapore, Hong Kong, Ethiopia, Switzerland, Indonesia. I've worked in Kathmandu in international schools too.
So you have like a forum where you go and you're like putting.
What I do is I blast out my email to all the places I've worked and ask them to send it on. And so kids are usually through their teachers, because when they're I invite them to do it on their own. But, a lot of kids don't have phones and aren't allowed on social media, which is appropriate. But the teachers with their computer and the whiteboard, they can be talking to me during the day, and I'm often on the other side of the planet. So I'm sleeping when they're texting me or tweeting me. The kindergartners were tweeting. This one teacher was just so into it, and it was pretty immediate. It was very cool. So cool. Lion Queens, how that came about. If you don't mind, Cheryl, I think I'll just switch to screen share right now.
Please do.
Because I think this is going to be more interesting. Here we go. So I would start right here with this. So I'm going to India, and I want to write a grant to be able to go over and speak. So I'm starting to think about a book. And I also realized, having worked with National Geographic Kids magazine and having worked for the other magazine when I set some world records climbing and skiing, and some of them were covered by National Geographic magazine. So they had really taught me that kids love animals. And of course I love animals, but I'm thrilled by different cultures and also seeing how similar we are. We're one human family. So I said, okay, I'm going to India, but I want to combine animals with culture. Now, how am I going to do that? So I started looking into animals, and I found out how rare the Asiatic lion is. And at one point, as far as they could tell, counting them, they were down to about a dozen, about 12.
Yeah, back in
And
like the early
then when
1900s. Yeah.
correct, thank you, Cheryl, early 1900s, when they stopped hunting them. This was a hunting ground of the Maharaja, and they realized we should probably set this property aside. And we should take a look at these lions before they're completely gone. So that's when I started finding out about the lion queens, and I love this. So I was starting to read some things like this, and they routinely put their lives at risk to track lions and aid them if injured. So I was so excited. It was very tricky to get in touch with this area of the world, but I have to say, for all the other books I did, Cheryl, like The Vanishing Cultures, there was no internet then. There wasn't even, no texting. I couldn't even call. All I had was fax. Well, they didn't have fax. What did we use before that? It was telex. So
Right.
all I was used to do, I'm 65. So what I used to do is just learn about something and show up. I just go to that area of the world and try and sort it out. So now, this day and age, I can get online and start looking and finding things like this. So that's the long story of how I found the Lion Queens. And I went, wow, if I can show up there and meet some of them, and if they'll take me out, that would be an incredible book.
Right.
And you can't get into this area really as a foreigner. You could go there, but I found a number and I kept calling all these different phone numbers. And what was key, Cheryl's going to recognize this name. There was one man named Nalin, and I called numerous times. And so finally, someone put this man Nalin on the phone. I'm calling from the US.
Uh-huh.
And his English is spotty, but he understood I wanted to come. And would there be a place to stay in town for a foreigner? And he said, we'd find something, just come. So I did.
Wow.
I showed up at about midnight. He stayed up. We couldn't stay at the place in the park. And he slapped me on a motorbike with a man I'd never met. And I'd never met Nalin in the middle of the night. And I went to this house. They put me up and I was fine. But that's kind of what it's like for me. You have to trust someone and just run with it.
I'm curious, how do you pack for this? Like, what do you have like a standard travel bag for all these trips you take?
Very good question. And you pack very lightly.
Right.
Because it's got to fit on my back. In the middle of the night, you're put on a motorcycle. The main thing, Cheryl, is my camera gear here.
Yeah.
I want to pull up something a little more interesting while we're talking. I'm going to pull up a photo of Gir, where I'm going. This is the main street in Gir, India. And of course, cows are sacred. They're Hindu and Muslim here, but you will find cows wandering everywhere. Mm-hmm. And this is where I am at about midnight, totally dark, never been there before. I showed up in a car that I paid a man to drive me 3 hours from the airport. So a lot of it is built on trust, but these people in Gujarat are just so lovely. But anyhow, back to your question of packing. My job is to be the camera. I am legs and eyes for my camera. So I wear the same thing. I get it washed or I hand wash it, but I may have a second set of clothing, but it's all camera equipment, mostly packed, and whatever I need to be warm. And it was warm here. So I bring very little. I assumed I'd find a bed somewhere, but I have often gone with a sleeping bag and a bivy sack. That means a bivouac sack.
Yeah.
So I can sleep out anywhere. So it's pretty basic when I travel. Pretty basic.
Wow.
I'm a walking camera. That's the way I think of myself. I'm there to get the materials, and I'm also there to make the local people feel comfortable not feel threatened. Like, I'm usually entertainment. They're usually laughing at me because I don't do anything the right way, but then someone kindly shows me how.
Uh-huh.
And usually that kind person, I've learned this over time, Cheryl. And this time it was Nalin, and then Dinesh kind of took over, but Nalin just sort of knew that I knew nothing and couldn't speak the language, and he sort of would check in on me, and I'd in on him every day, and he helped me. He understood what I was trying to do, so he tried to help me, and still does.
So how long were you there?
I was there 3 weeks, a little more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was this overall like process of your days? Like, were you going out looking for lions with the lion queens every day? Were you
It
interviewing them?
varied.
Like,
I was in and out. I was meeting people. I was talking to them. I was getting information about the lions. Once some people got to know me, I was able to meet more people in the government that gave me permission. Okay, for example, so now I'll show you a few more things here. For example, it took a while. This is a very special spot in Gear. They let almost no one in here, but they had gotten to know me over time.
uh-huh.
And if you can see my little arrow, there is a leopard in these very heavy metal cages. So when the animals are injured, and we're jumping ahead here, I'm going to show you. Well, actually, I think I think I have that picture here. Well, it's in the book. Rashila tranquilized. I don't want to make you dizzy, but maybe we can find Rashila tranquilizing the animal. No, anyhow, Rashila will tranquilize the animals, and they'll be brought in, and the vets will work on them.
Right.
And but really, here, let's go to one of my favorite photos. So here's some of the lions. Let's get to some of the meat and the fun of this. So this is our introduction to Rashila. And when I went to this area, and to answer your question, what are my days like? I just go, I don't speak the language. I try to meet a few people. Nalin knows what I'm trying to do. I walk the streets, I take some pictures. I start to meet the people that are organizing the park. They start to understand what I'm trying to do. At the same time, some of the local people like me. I keep eating at the same place run by a family, and they know I'm going to come, and we start to communicate. So I'm sort of like this funny little fixture in the town. And word got through via Nalin to Rashila, and because there are many lion queens, and Rashila was the first woman to ever become a lion queen.
Right.
And I felt so incredibly lucky that she happened to be in from her patrol on the forest, and she put on her beautiful sari, which is Indian dress, and she met me at this sort of square bunker that the government gives her. Her mom had a small home where she stayed, but she also had that, and you could see she was nervous. She didn't know what to expect, so she was beautifully dressed, lovely earrings, and she walks into the government building, so it's not too personal.
Uh-huh.
And she sits down, and I found a young he was like 19, I think, maybe 20, but I think he was still a teenager, a fellow who could speak some English, and he came in and translated for me. And once Rashila saw I couldn't speak the language and I'm kind of low key, you could see she relaxed. And she explained, well, I may be able to take you out. There are a lot of government regulations. And she goes, let me see what I can work out after we chatted a little bit. And another thing I do, Cheryl, is especially if you're working for the government, you can't give people money. That people might think it's a bribe. But what I do pack, since that was a great question, is lots of gifts. And I bring nice gifts, but they have to be small. So I had purchased some nice watches. They weren't, looking like they were nice watches, but a knockoff. I spent some of my own money and bought some really nice watches, and I found one, I can't remember the company now, but its symbol was a lion and it was in the box. So I brought that and gave it to her, and this is the first time she spoke. I'm going to get teary-eyed. I'm such a sap, but this is the first time she spoke to me in English, and she goes, I love lions. She literally, I gave her that and I pointed to the picture, and it was just so cool. It's one of these, brief moments that you just love. And so then she knew I was earnest in what I wanted to do. I think she understood it was for children. I'm not doing a book for adults trying to impress anyone. It's like, let's educate the kids. They're tomorrow. They're our future. Let's show them what's going on here. And they'll be educated about the lions and her work, which she lives for her work. And one thing I want to shout out right now is, since the book, Rashila has been bumped up to being head of all rescue, which is major for a woman. She's Hindu. Right. They often expect Hindu women to be at home and not working. And in over 1,000 rescues, she is 100%. She has not lost an animal. I mean, that's mind-boggling.
That's fantastic, yeah.
But I throw that out there just to show how devoted she is to her job. So back
in her job in general, I should say, as a lion queen, she's a forest ranger in this national park, right? So she's going around, she's patrolling the park, she's watching out for poachers, she's checking on the number of animals, all those sort of things, right?
Right. So it has a little different term in India as opposed to ranger, but she was hired first to be more like I'm going to paraphrase, but it's more like a tracker. She has an area of gear, forest, that is her responsibility. And lions tend to stay in their pride. The females stick with the pride, but the males tend to stay in the same region, with their pride, near the pride, but females are in the pride. And so Rashila would get to know the animals in her region, and it was her responsibility to know that they were all in good health. So if one had been injured, or there had been a lion fight, or maybe there'd been a terrible storm and one got hit by a flying tree limb, or who knows what. But so that's the job, basically, is what's going on with the lions in your specific region that you're given. Cool. And the really great story, I want to show more of the pictures here. So yeah, let's talking, do that. So we aren't just looking at one photo. Part of what's I'll show you a couple. Here's another lion queen. This is Rashila, or Darshana. This is Darshana. Yeah. And we were talking about how much they really do love the animals, all animals. So they're responsible for their section of the forest and rescue for any of the animals. And so they really demonstrated that for me. This is Rashila when she was younger, and you can see her with a little baby lion. Probably the mother was killed. Who knows where, how. Poaching is less and less and less in this area because the lion queens also, this is Darshana right here. Also a big part of what they do is education. So they teach the outer lion communities about the lions and that they won't bother them, so the people are less likely to shoot them or poison them. And I think that's part of why the success of the lion queens. The women did very well with the animals, they did very well with the education, and people were trusting them. So they started to, after Rashila, they started to draft or allow more women to become these rangers. Right. But Rashila was the first one, and Darshana's, one of Darshana's big roles, even though she is a ranger, is education. That was her specialty. And this is Darshana, she's in the book as well. And this shows you what they wear. She's got her GPS in her hand, but largely this is key, this stick, because when the young lions are born, they hear this from that moment on. Whenever the rangers come near, and they're wild, they give them plenty of space, the lions, but they will pound that stick on the ground and they'll say, hut, 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 hut. And that just becomes something familiar to the lions. When they hear that, they know there's no danger. And there are stories about how lion queens have saved their own lives when they were on their motorbikes leaving dusk and dawn, or when the lionesses do their hunting.
Right.
And the lion queens know enough to leave before dusk, be out of the forest. And they ended up leaving a little bit late, and a lioness started to track them. And they had to
Yikes.
have the courage and the knowledge to pull the bike around, hop off the bike, pound the stick, hut, 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 hut. And then the lioness veered off. Because if they knew, if they kept going and speeding up, the lioness would chase them.
Right. Huh.
So to who knows what end. So they're intelligent, knowledgeable, and courageous. And here's the GPS in Darshana's hand, and I just like to show this because they use all the tech too now in India, even though they walk very simply with their sticks in the forest. They are trained with firearms if they need them in case of poaching, but they also believe and understand education's a better tool.
And they're also stylish with the screen nail polish.
Well, that's what I love this to show. Darshana's still Darshana. She dresses up or whatever, or likes her nail polish, even though she wears her official uniform. And, I brush my hair. We're still girls for this talk. So I love the little things like that. Darshana and Rashila would have earrings or polished nails. And sorry if I'm sounding sort of sexist here, but it was just nice that they like to show their femininity, yet be expert at their job. I thought that was pretty cool. I'm going to show you one more picture of Gir. This is the main street of Gir, and this is a truck. You can see this is for a roof. Things happen very slowly if you can take only one piece of metal for a roof at a time, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And something this small right here is a garage to get things fixed. Not many cars. You're pretty well off if you've got something like this motorbike truck. Just to give you a feel of the outer lying community around Gir, it's not a wealthy community. It's not a big tourist park like Yosemite in the United States.
It's way over in the far west corner of
correct.
India, pretty far from any of the major cities, I think.
Yep, north and west. Gujarat is not one of the wealthier. Gujarat is like a state, the state that Gir is in. It's not a wealthy state, typically. But this will show you a little bit about the lions themselves and how and why, if a lion, this is a lioness here, and the lionesses tend to do the hunting for the pride. The males are grouped 2 and 3 together, and they often do their own hunting, but the lionesses share and especially feed the younger ones. But if those teeth latch onto you, it's too hard you can't shake yourself out.
No, those are too deep.
So the lion queens know this. They respect the lions. They are wild animals. They are not tamed.
I think I asked you once in the editorial process, I said, so do the lions queens have relationships with the lions? Do they name them or anything like that? And you said, no, that's not something they do.
Well, I think they may have their own names for the lions, how they determine one from the other, but they don't interact with them.
Right.
I worked with a man with baboons, Butu, and he was gathering data for a scientist at UCLA. And for 3 days, I lived with him with the baboons, but you keep your distance. Your job is to observe them, but not to change them in any way or disturb their natural life or natural habitat. And so the lion queens know this. They're very intelligent, well trained, and they give the lions their space. But they come close if there's an injury. And I started telling the story about Rashila as the first lion queen. She took her brother, who thought he wanted to be a ranger in the park. And when they got there, she was older, he decided he didn't want to do it. So she said, I'll give it a try. And she passed the test. and there was a difficult physical test that went along with the other test, questions and whatnot. So she qualified, and they kept trying to then give her desk jobs in the government with the park, but she really wanted to work with the animals. And what happened was the veterinarian that they had working with the animals at the park understood, this made all the difference. He understood the intelligence and the passion and the devotion Rashila had. And Rashila told me this story herself. She didn't have to volunteer this. She could have just said, I made my way and I did it. She made a point when we were together with a 19-year-old translator to tell me the story about this. The people are so great to honor someone else. And she said, this veterinarian made all the difference, that he selected her to learn how to run the tranquilizing. And it's basically a rifle that you use with a tranquilizing dart. And she had to learn the right amounts to use so that you don't kill the animal, but enough so that it stays
dormant,
sort of suspended in a sleep, so you're safe. And it's high precision work. And now we know she's done 1,000 rescues, 100%. Right. So not every rescue needs tranquilizing, but so because of that vet training her, the men had to take her on the most dangerous rescues when they needed a tranquilizing expert. Right. And therefore she gained all the respect. Oh, here, I should be showing you more of these pictures. Now she gained more of the respect from all the men, and then eventually more women were able to come in because of her. Well, and so what I'd like to say about the park here, sorry, little segue. We're talking about the lions, but what it is, it's a beautiful park with all the natural flora and fauna. And some people come to the Gear area because there's hundreds of birds there. And it's also known for its reptiles.
And yeah, is that a cobra?
Yes, that is a cobra. You really do have to be careful. I had to be careful. I'm not a fan of snakes. And there you go. There's proof of the pudding. And so some of these photos, I should give a shout out, Cheryl, to Nalin and Dinesh. So Nalin helped me get things done. And he didn't let me know this in the beginning, Cheryl, that he had worked and he had a 35 millimeter camera and he had been taking photographs. So photographs in the book belong to Nalin. And this is Dinesh. Dinesh is the guide. Indian people do go here and they can get a Jeep and they can tour the area in specific spots. And you will have a guide. You can't go without a guide. And Dinesh right here is one of them. And Dinesh speaks a little bit of English. And because he's a guide, he has a camera and he had been taking photographs over time. So both Dinesh and Nalin have some of the, real stoppers, the good photos. Some of my photos of lions are in there, but my time was limited. I just had to get what I could get. And what was most important to me, Cheryl, was for the students that were following me through social media, if I didn't at least get a photo of a lion, they'd be so disappointed.
Of course, yeah.
So I was out, and again, this costs me money, but I was out at dawn, I was out at dusk, I was getting Jeeps, and Nalin was the one who the government said, there's no way, you're not going to get a Jeep, you can't go in there. And when the smoke cleared and Nalin explained what I was doing, I'd turn around and there would be a Jeep. Or when the smoke cleared, there would be Rashila with her motorbike saying, get on, girl, we're going, So you also have to be ready you never know what's going to happen. And I found India full of surprises that way. Just always be ready. They're going to tell you no, but the next time you turn around, they'll go, okay, do it, but it's right now. So,
yeah. So when you come back to the States and you have a ton of photographs like this, how do you go about figuring out what the story is going to be? Winnow it all down into a book?
Yeah, that's a good one, Cheryl. And you and I had to sort of go through this.
Yeah,
And
we
I
had
don't
lots of
know how many,
discussions.
yeah, I didn't know
And
how I was going
dress.
to go through. Now I would know a lot better if I'm going to be using someone else's photographs. Like Dinesh's computer is so old. He has a Mac that's the kind that had the big part that comes out the back,
Oh, right.
you
The
know?
iMac, yeah.
Yeah, and things don't work and break down and they can't get it fixed. So I learned my lesson, Cheryl. All my other books had been only my photographs. Yes.
Hmm.
And but we did think ahead. Remember, I took the permission with me
Yeah,
and we got permission signed. So that was good. Let's
yeah.
talk about the positive. So then I had most of the photos, but then had to see about getting them in larger resolutions and things like that. But we worked it all out. But the next time I will make sure, and I couldn't buy a thumb drive and gear.
Well,
Next
I was
time,
thinking more like, how do you figure out what the narrative of the
oh
book
no, I'll
is?
get
Like
there.
as
I
a
was just
writer.
we were talking about the photos. So I'll get
Yeah.
the thumb drive and get the
Like, how
photos.
do you know what science concepts to include and things like that?
Well, I
Or
do.
that there should be a map. Like, how do you work in map information into a story like this?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, when I go to a place like this, I have an idea of what I'd like to find. And there's kind of a rough outline. I kind of envisioned the book because I do believe I contacted you before I took off to see if you would
Yeah,
even
we
have any
talked a bit about it.
interest.
Yeah.
So I like to, from an editorial standpoint, I do try, if I can, editors are way too busy to talk to everybody, but I do try to connect to find out if there's something they specifically want or a direction they wouldn't go, because that will help me loosely when I am in an area.
Uh-huh.
And then I never know really what I'm going to find or who's going to allow me to do what. So I have a loose idea of following a day with Rashila, with a lion queen. Okay.
Right.
And then editorially, as I meet people and as I do things, the book is taking form in my mind, so that kind of informs me other photos I might need to tell that story. So it's really just a constant evolution, because as there's so many things about Gear Park I would never know or wouldn't have read online, but I'm finding it out as I go along. So
Yeah.
then editorially, when I come back, I've got all this material, I've got the idea in mind, and I could just send the photos and send my text, but I started using, just to help an editor, Book Creator, so that it's an easy way to see what photo goes with the text I'm thinking of. And so when I put something together in Book Creator, it gives an editor like you an idea of what I see, and then we took it from there.
Yeah. And we ended up talking a lot about like the web of life and biodiversity and how all of these different people and animals and plants and birds and fish and everything end up contributing to this web, and
Right.
how everything is such a careful balance.
Right. And
Yeah.
that came up because we were talking about the lions. There were
Yeah.
lions, then there weren't lions. Okay, to have lions, what do we need to have to support the lions? Well, to support the lions, you need to have their food source, which is the
So
deer.
deer and
Right. And
various
so
other
once
things.
it was a natural way of working into, well, the only way we can have the lions and keep the lions is to restore the web of life in this area of Gear, and allow it to maintain itself. So I would say, Cheryl, this is the way I feel. I don't know how you feel, but you do a good job with your books. Everyone out there, if you're listening editorially, and we did hear that in a review. For someone so young, these books are for, around third grade. I could see second graders, third graders. I could see fourth graders using it. But at any rate, to get in the concept and the ideas of an endangered species, and then to talk about the woman's role and the women as a ranger, and the first woman's ranger, that's a whole nother story. After, you're talking about the lions and then they're endangered, you're talking about the women and working and lion queens. And then we got to talk about Gear Park. What is this? How did it end up being what it is? And then on top of that, we threw in the web of life.
Yeah.
And it all fits naturally, but it's a lot to put in to one book for young children. So I think, you know, it's coming out during the pandemic. How many librarians have budgets? I've been even hearing about librarians, not only do they not have budgets, but some librarians are losing their jobs when they cut budgets.
It's a hard time out there, yeah,
It's
for
a
sure.
hard time out there. And so this book that I think is pretty cool, I'm going, wow, you know, I hope we can get it out there, you know, doing its work, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that what attracted me to it editorially was a lot of the things that you're saying was the fact that it's a conservation book that really centers a person who is from that place and the work that they are doing to conserve animals and to preserve the environment in that place.
Right.
And so and as well as the feminist angle, I enjoyed, of course. Right. And also
right.
Obviously like the awesome lion pictures, of course.
Well, yeah, you know, lions.
Yeah. Who doesn't like?
Well, and so much. I was
gonna say who doesn't like lions, but the answer is, of course, deer.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, I was going to say something else I can't remember about lions, but I want to throw out one more thing for you, Cheryl, is that right off in the beginning, because I was writing about how the lions are key to just the Indian culture.
Oh, yeah.
And I had a photograph that I had taken of a lion carved into a railing, and you were saying, well, and Cheryl did this. You went out and picked out pictures of lions that were carvings, just sort of used as decoration, as part of the culture.
There's a lot of really beautiful, I guess we call it folk art or indigenous art. In India, like decorations on trucks and statues, right. and the official symbol of India is 3 lions.
Right, and so that was a great idea, I thought, because it's proof of the pudding that lions are that important to the people of India.
In the conception of India, yeah.
And so many people around the world don't realize, they associate lions with Africa. They don't realize there's an Asiatic lion.
That used to range all the way from like Greece to China.
Right.
We put that its former area in the map, in the book, and
I know, and
that's one
why
little
I think,
park. Yeah.
Right, and that's why I think it's so key to, or I want this book to be out there, because I think it has so many surprising elements like that. Asiatic lion and female rangers. So anyhow, I'm on a mission to get the book out there, but marketing, I would say, isn't my forte. I have to wear a lot of different hats to get what I get done. And I think I'll say, now that I showed Dinesh here, another hat is I try to help the communities that I work in. So what Dinesh has here in those bags is food. And when the pandemic started, he got in touch with me. And he said, you know, people here just are even having trouble getting any food. There's no work. Can you help us? So I'd already started a small nonprofit, and we'd helped when there was the earthquake in Nepal. We sent quite a bit of money over. We did a fundraiser and sent money to a community where I'd done a book in Nepal. And so those are food bags. Here, I'll turn that off. And these are some of the people here. They got a little bit of money and they got food.
Oh, that's great.
Yep. So these are the people in the region of Gear that we sent money back to, so they can have food and a little cash.
And does your nonprofit have like a website or anything?
Oh, it does. You know, you see, Cheryl, am I marketing? No, duh. Yes. Well, we're doing screen share. I could pull it up. It's called goodfund.org. I could do
goodfund.org.
Yep, I'm going to do it. Oops. Site can't be reached. Why?
Well, I think you put a hyphen in the.
Yeah, there's a hyphen.
I think it was supposed to have a D in it, and you lost it. It just said good fun rather than good fun.
Oh, okay. All right. I will try one more time. Let's go for it.
Yeah, I think if you just hit return.
Oh, you know me. Okay. Home, goodfun.org. Let's go. So here it is. And this is another one of my hats. It's not a fancy site. I built it myself, but I did put in the donate button, and we have a Facebook page. You can see some of my other books here, photos from my other books. I work with cultures around the world. And then down here is a free book called Loving Kindness. This is the first one I did with social media. And it's a book that actually, I put it up on YouTube and the pages turn.
Nice.
And that's because, you know, so many students working online, I didn't want to take up space on a computer for a teacher or the student, and they can just go on a link and the book's on YouTube. So it's a space saver. Yeah, I'll show you in a minute.
No, well, actually, I mean, I think it's probably about time that we should wrap up here, I have to say.
All right.
So I'll just ask my last question. Do you have a favorite photo in the book that you'd like to show us?
Well, okay, I did jump on it, and this was the one that I showed. And I'll just come back to this again, because those are the lionesses. And I love the idea that the hunters are the females and the pride is the females. The males leave the pride when they're young. And there's Rashila, who deserves all the credit. You can see her little gold earrings there. And I'll tell one last story. Rashila told me this when she was spending time with the man who is now her husband. She said to him, you know, we asked her to marry her. He asked her to marry him. And she said, well, you know what I do for work, and the lions are the most important to me, and I will marry you if you allow me to do my job. So she told me that story.
He agreed to that.
Yes. And he
That's
works
great.
for the government too, and they now have a little baby boy.
Oh, how nice.
He was just born before, I didn't realize she was pregnant. He was born after I left.
Oh, nice.
So you can probably relate to that story.
Yeah, I had a baby who was born a year ago tomorrow altogether for the panel.
So actually, now that I think of it, you and Rashila had your first boys, baby boys, first babies and boys at about the same time.
Oh,
Cool.
Well, it was quite a lot of fun to work on this book, and The Lion Queens of India, which is now available through leonlow.com and book retailers near you. And congratulations and happy book birthday on having it out in the world.
Thank you, Cheryl, because now it finally feels like at least a little celebration.
Yeah. And thank you to everybody who has joined us today, and keep your eyes peeled on the Lee and Low website and social media for our next Tea Time Talk, which will be coming up sometime in October. So thanks very much. And thank you, Jan.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.